How we doing, guys? We're back with another episode of AI Right, and I'm joined by Andy and Megan. How are you?
Hello, Chris.
Excellent.
Good. Good to see you.
Good
Suffering
to
from
see you.
man flu, so
Oh
How
no.
are you? You were a bit
I,
quiet there when you come on. Was it?
I am. I am. So, although I usually like the sound of my voice, not today.
I was going to text you this morning. See, I was a bit hoarse as well. I've been a bit feeling a bit groggy over the weekend. Not very good, but not quite man flu.
Megan, are you ill? Are we going to have a hat trick? Are you fine?
No, I am fine. But I'm tempting fate by saying that because my daughter starts nursery next week. It's basically only a matter of time before I have a
Oh,
Victorian illness that you assumed had died out.
I actually I don't call it nursery. I call it the bioweapons lab because
Okay.
that
Okay.
is basically a petri dish that you just get exposed to continually. So
I
good
don't want to
luck.
say I don't want to say I'm anxious about it, but I hear on a daily basis from everyone around me about how much I should expect to be ill. So yeah,
very
You just
good.
learn
bracing
to
myself.
you learn to
Counting
enjoy
down
it.
the days.
One of life's experiences, being constantly ill.
Great, good.
And a slightly
Let's
more
move on.
positive note, we're here today to discuss AI, specifically around product management. And we've obviously been having a conversation the last week or so about what the format of the episode and what we were going to be chatting about this week. So we decided that we got a few requests from some of our listeners to suggest some topics. And one of them in particular wanted to chat around product management. And obviously for yourself, Megan, that could be quite appropriate given you work in a kind of product setting at the BBC.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely.
looking forward to getting your take on this. So one of the first things that the listener was quite keen to find out about was what type of role and skills were needed by a product manager in the AI space. So should we kick it? Should we get started around that and
Yeah,
get your
definitely.
perspective on it?
I think it's good to start with a kind of definition of what product manager role typically looks like before we go into like the AI specifics of it. So, um, in the worlds that I'm in at the BBC, like I work within what we call the product group. It's all about building the kind of tools and services that meet a user's needs. So that can be like users external to the BBC as the audience that come and consume our digital products, or it can be internal users, journalists, content creators, the people that are kind of making and distributing the content that we put out into the world. But the whole focus of a product manager at the BBC is to, look at the type of opportunities there are to better serve the audience or internal users and work out what kind of viable means there are to do that. So it's kind of got a twofold purpose, a product management role. It's looking at the value and it's looking at the viability and trying to make sure that the whole team is focused on those two concerns and optimizing for the two at once. Um, it's an interesting role because it's not one that has a very prescriptive background. So I work with a lot of product managers from a very wide range of different backgrounds. So some of them are technical, have come through either software engineering or data roles. More often they've come through like product management uh, as a kind of like next step in their career after having done something else for quite a long time. So they'll have done project management or delivery management. They might have worked in UX. They could have done engineering roles, as I said. And they've kind of realized that actually product management allows them to do what they're good at, but in a different setting. I don't know about what kind of interactions you've had, Andy, with product
Yeah.
managers.
No, I think that chimed. One question I was going to ask when you were giving that quite erudite explanation was, do you differentiate between a product manager and a product owner?
Mm, Personally, no, but I'm not sure it's because it's not necessarily because I should just use them interchangeably, but I tend not to. We only have the job title of product manager, and a product owner, I would probably say, is a term that I'll use only when we're talking about something very specific that they have leadership of. So it's
Hmm.
not necessarily a role that they have in terms of what would appear on their LinkedIn profile, but in some contexts, a product manager may be the product owner for some service or some technology. But yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if I'm that strict on it.
No, it's the same with me, and I don't know because we're obviously more on the techie data scientist side, and it's interesting because I don't really differentiate either. Although I've definitely met people who even recently have the title product owner, and then there's people who
Yeah.
are product manager, and I always kind of think, I feel like you're all doing the same good work. I don't differentiate. But yeah, I agree with you. And I think I agree with the multiple different backgrounds. I think that's a real strength. I think product management is the hot area right now. I think um for AI and machine learning and all of these kind of latest wave of tech things, there's a lot of talk about being part of the latest wave of engineering roles and engineering talent, but really I think product managers are the absolute gold dust. Product managers who are good
Yeah.
and can effectively translate between the technical teams building the product, the people designing the product, and the business or organizational needs or customer needs. That's just absolute gold. I was at a meetup a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking to someone about, I don't know if you all remember, like Netflix had a $900,000 salaried role or something like that, right? When the whole Gen AI wave came out, and everyone was like, "Oh, wow, that makes sense, an AI role." It was for a product manager role. It's for an
Okay.
AI like product manager. It wasn't for an engineer. And I think there's a reason for that, right? Organizations like Netflix and others recognize the value of someone like that. And then at the same meetup, I was speaking to some people who feel they've kind of bled into a role like that and they don't feel their values recognized. And I think that's a real shame because I think people who can do all that translation work and really, help, they do things as well on top of what you said, Megan, like they help, organize how the product is managed from the sense of, feature requests coming in, how are they prioritized effectively, how do you organize feedback with the customers? How do you feed that through into that prioritization piece? How do teams effectively scope out the work that's required to deliver the different features? How do you organize the teams to deliver those features? All of that kind of falls under it. And I think people can do that are absolute gold dust. And I think it's very underappreciated, except at
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah,
Well,
except for
it's
Netflix.
paid very well.
I think they we spent a long time talking about the concept of a 10 times engineer, or some
Yeah,
individual contributor that can go and add like a massive amount of value compared to others. I think probably product management is the role that gets 10 times the value out of an engineering team.
great.
If you can get them, if you get a good product manager who can absolutely nail which features are the ones to prioritize, which direction you should be going in, and which user group you should be focused on, you'll stop yourself from building all of that tech debt and nonsense feature factory stuff because they just
Yeah,
won't let it. They won't let it happen.
yeah, no, and I agree. And it kind of, yeah, yeah, I agree. And that sometimes might not be someone officially called product manager, but they take on that role. That's a wider point of leadership, right? I think just to your point, Megan, you just sort of made me think that there's all this kind of debate. Sometimes it goes back and forth about do you need middle management? And
Yeah, yeah,
I feel like Google ran an experiment and they found it didn't quite work without middle managers. Whether it's called middle managers, whether it's called whatever it's called, but the point, I agree with your point. If you sort of just have lots of engineers building stuff and scientists building stuff, that's not necessarily good. Um, I've never been one of these people that believe, just stick 10 smart people in a room and they'll just work it out. You need some anchor point
he
to provide the
says as a
structure.
middle manager.
Exactly.
Not kidding.
Flag for middle management, right?
What?
But
Has anyone ever cheered that point before? Doubt it.
absolutely not. That will not go viral. Hashtag middle management. But that way it's just I think someone who provides, to your point, that leadership, that direction, absolutely gets stuff done. Someone, people just sit in a room and just build lots of cool stuff. You'll have lots of fun POCs, but not really a product, and that's fundamentally what the role is about.
I'm trying to remind
Not
myself of the name of that. Was it a trainer brand where they like specifically refused to have a hierarchy and it just turned into chaos. So like anyone could put forward a proposal for a project. They would like almost put it out to whoever wanted to come on board and then they would do that. They would have no management structures like saying which things to go forward or not, and it descended into absolute chaos in all the ways you'd expect. Like cliques formed, people were treating each other really bad. Yeah, don't do without
Yeah.
don't do without middle management because a flat culture is not it.
Yeah. Or product management in particular, I think that's the key thing. Because you do get kind of middle management layers that build up, and sometimes it is maybe organizational cruft a little bit. Whereas
Yeah.
people are very product minded. I think product mindset in the wider sense is super important as well. We can maybe get onto that, but yeah, I think product managers an excellent role to get into. People I've met are good product managers. To your point, Megan, they're just absolute value drivers, you know,
Yeah.
and they might not be the kind of superstar engineers by background, or they might not be the super business people by background, but they've just got this thing that can glue everything together and drive you forward to value. So that's critically important, I think.
I had a couple of quick questions on that then. So first of all, if you're an engineer or a data scientist that's sitting in a product team and face off to a product manager, do you not have to be as commercially focused or be able to talk to the business or do that translation piece yourself, because really that's the role of the product manager? And is that taking away part of being a data scientist essentially?
It's a good question. I think I came into an organization that had product managers from a position where I did not have the luxury of product management involvement in projects. I did honestly find it a little bit difficult because there were roles and things I would expect myself to be involved in that are actually within the remit of a product manager, and that I had to sort of relinquish a little bit of that involvement or control. I think probably yes, you can expect there to be things if you're not supported by a product manager and you suddenly find yourself with a product manager joining your team or your org. There are things you will probably be expected to step back from slightly, but I would almost view it in the opposite sense. It opens up so much more of your time to going and solving the actual data science problem at hand, and reduces a little bit of that time spent doing the stakeholder engagement. I don't know how you term it, like the kind of marketing of your ideas.
Yeah.
Becomes something that someone can take on as a full-time job. And it is a full-time job. It is something that takes a lot of effort and work. If you sit in a technical team that doesn't have a product manager on it, you would expect that everyone is putting in quite a bit of effort to managing all of that prioritization, stakeholder management and mapping, and it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like doing this properly is like so much effort and time. So I agree with you, Megan. Having someone whose job is just even organizing things like, having a well curated backlog of feature requests, having mechanisms through which to try and prioritize them, really having a vision laid out. All of that takes so much time and effort, and yes, multiple people can do it. But to Megan's point, like, we've got lots of other stuff on our plates. It's good to have someone who sort of thinks about that, especially in larger organizations, I think, where, that kind of specialization comes across for a reason. It's because you've got so many people working across so many different projects that if you all did everything, it would be a bit of a nightmare. In smaller companies, like when I was in sort of more the startup world, you would kind of all pitch in and do a lot of that, but you very much had one or two problems to solve. You weren't in a large organization, you've got 10 plates to spin, and yeah, it's just not going to work. So yeah, and I think it doesn't disconnect you completely from the business, nor should it, especially if you're a data scientist. But it maybe means you can focus more on understanding in detail certain topics that then really impact what you're building technically, rather than just sort of
Yeah.
the general gist of what you're trying to solve and why. That's sort of, you can assume that's taken care of and there's a framework in place, and more you can go after, very specifically for this feature, what do you need?
Yeah.
Why do you need it? What data do I need? And all those good questions.
And again, I think a good product manager will still bring you in because they'll know when to bring a question to you, or they'll know when it's of value for you to be the one presenting. They won't just be always the kind of guard between you and the rest of the business. They'll be the facilitator. They'll know when it's appropriate to have you jump in. But I think, yeah, what Andy said is spot on. There'll be places and organizations where you can work if you would prefer to in the absence of a product manager because they won't have the funding for it. And if you like doing that combo of technical plus products, you probably could find your space. Even in big organizations, we've said it's sometimes hard to get your hands on product management. There will be, a dearth of it somewhere in a big organization, and you can get stuck in there to a degree.
No, absolutely. And I think, sorry, Chris, just a point that came up. We should, I think you alluded to it earlier, Megan, we should absolutely differentiate between project management and product management.
100%. 100%. Or we'll offend people.
Yeah, many, yeah. Yeah, be careful here. Many organizations have a PMO, project management organization. I think the really powerful ones are ones that have pivoted to become product management organizations. And that sounds subtly different, but it's not. A sort of project management and sort of in the just that sort of whole setup sometimes is a bit traditional. I'm not saying it always is, but it's waterfall. It's like, what's the plan for the next 12 months? 3 months of this, 3 months of this, 3 months of that. And it's not agile and dynamic and fast moving and responsive in the ways that kind of maybe more modern development practices sometimes are.
Yeah.
A
And I think
product manager,
the
yeah, thanks.
caveat to always add to that is like there will still be spaces and organizations where project led focus is the right thing, but I think they're actually starting to get less and less common. I think
Yeah, no,
as technology gets faster, as AI starts to really like hit the tracks, there are few spaces where you can plan 12 months out.
and I think as well there's a recognition probably from just the way technologies are set up now that the concept of platforms and the concept of services and solutions, all of that is kind of more as products. A project very much sounds like you deliver something and then walk away and go deliver the next thing.
Yeah, it's the lack of
Products,
ownership bit, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
products more a holistic offering
yeah, yeah, yeah.
of services or features or capabilities that sit together some logically coherent way.
And then
Whether
just
that's on
just to add the last point of clarity to make sure we haven't offended anyone at all, that's not saying that you don't need project or delivery management professionals. Like having people that can hold you to your agile process or can keep your methodology tight to enable the delivery of whatever product it is you're building, essential. Need them,
100%.
love them.
We need all members of the family together.
Yeah.
We do. Yeah.
So what I was going to ask you then was, obviously this topic has been brought up by somebody who's looking to move into the product management space, and Megan, you touched upon that people might come from a UX background, engineering background, but if you're bringing together a mixture of software professionals and data professionals and whoever might be in the mix of that, how technical would you need to be? Specifically if you're working with ML engineers that are building algorithms and you're deploying them into the product specifically, how much of that would you have to understand or not so much?
I'd probably say TLDR, not technical, not hugely technical in my experience, but with a few important caveats. I think it is incredibly important that someone is curious. So what I mean by that is to have the confidence to sit in a space where people are using jargon, terms they don't understand, even introducing like algorithms or models that they don't necessarily know the inner workings of. They have to have the confidence to be able to know that it's okay that they don't know how it all works and what it all means, but they have to be curious enough that they can pick up what it takes to do their job. So you can't just sit there totally ignorant of it all forever in a space where it's relevant to deliver, especially to answer that feasibility question. But you do not need to be doing like homework of a night time to understand every aspect of how it all works and become de facto a data scientist or a software engineer at the same time as being a product manager, because it's just not feasible. I don't think it's that helpful. I think it allows someone to get overly distracted with the detail that someone else is better off handling.
Yeah. Your job is not to solutionize.
Yeah.
Your job is not to find the solution. Your job is to like help articulate the question, the challenge. So I think.
And then the other caveat I would add is, I think it is incredibly useful, pretty healthy even, for a product manager to be good at data stuff, specifically analytics, and specifically where it's about capturing like the performance metrics of their product. So if someone can go in and like self-serve their own reporting needs, or go and answer their own questions about like the scale of the user group that this thing is going to impact, and can get stuck in that way, that's the kind of technical skill set that I think is probably the most useful for someone interested in products getting stuck into straight away. So like learning SQL, getting comfortable with using databases and pulling together like analytics and data visualization, that sort of stuff I think is very valuable.
That's interesting. I would.
Sorry.
I was just going to say. I would always say that product managers should be very focused on the why. Like I was saying, they should be a savvy user of the technology. I think is important. To Megan's point, know the limitations, you're not going to be helping anybody if you think like AI can do everything, and you're not going to help everyone if you kind of don't really get anything about the space. But if you have a certain base level of knowledge, and you can articulate a vision really well, you can listen very well to potential customers, clients, etc. And you can articulate, the problem you're trying to solve. That's the super important piece. And then let the techies kind of solutionize under you. But I agree with Megan's point. Don't try and do everything, because it's not gonna work, and you're gonna lose focus. But I think it is important to have some base knowledge. If you're coming at this completely fresh from having only ever worked with analog technologies or something, you only work with pen and paper or something, whatever, nothing wrong with that. But like, it's just, you're not going to get what you're trying to do. But if you're a savvy user of the technology, you're aware enough to be able to articulate that product vision, then you're in a good place, I think.
Perfect. So we're talking about AI specifically impacting product management. Obviously, typically in product management teams, as you said, you've got engineering and ML type professionals.
Yep.
But if you're maybe considering like large language models or that might be able to support that, how is AI going to impact product management as a concept?
It's super interesting. I kind of feel like they might be quite minimally impacted. And I don't know. That's quite an ambitious thing to say. But I've just got this feeling where they're kind of in this sweet spot where it's so much about vision and understanding of other people and how users will approach it. I just think it's so people centric. I fail to see where the bog standard tasks are that they can automate. Unlike coders who have lots of boilerplate they write, and unlike maybe even to Megan's point, some of the analytics you would do, maybe the AI will impact there. I think so much of it is about being able to listen and take all of that together and bring a vision together that I'm sort of, maybe for brainstorming stuff, but I don't know. What do you think, Megan? An AI enabled product manager, what does that do?
I think I view it as quite similar to the way it will impact the majority of jobs, and that it's going to be an augmentation rather than a replacement for product managers. So I can imagine you've got a week's task laid out for yourself as a product manager. There'll be some proportion of those are being the interface between your team and the business. There'll be some proportion of those are documenting and coming up with priority calls on different aspects. If I lay out all of those tasks, I think there are ways in which different AI technologies could like speed them up or enhance your answer, add the kind of extra finishing touches to something. I don't think there's any one task I can point at and be like, oh yeah, you get AI to do that one start to finish. So I think if you were, I don't know, starting a new project and you really didn't understand your stakeholder landscape, you'd have a bit of a back and forth maybe with a large language model, ask it, what would I do to get the lay of the land here? What types of people would I speak to? And you start to pull a plan together. But AI is maybe not the best thing to go and take interviews with those people. As Andy said, being the personable, approachable face of it is going to pay dividends. Get into the conversation direct. There's loads of examples like that where I think just having it peppered in, adding a little bit of an augmentation here and there and speeding up some of your tasks, good, but it's very difficult to point at any one task of a product manager and be like, yeah, that one can just go.
Yeah. And I think moving on from just product management, if you think about people who go from that into becoming like product leaders or leaders, chief product officer or whatever, people who think about product really strategically, that is, I think, I don't see AI touching that for a long time, but I also see that as like the absolute differentiator in this space. And this is it's what a lot of organizations are coming up against, right? And this was the whole argument about people were just saying, this is all just a ChatGPT wrapper. There was it was recognized there was a dearth of really innovative product thinking. And I think that's now morphed into, Satya Nadella and others saying it's the death of SaaS and stuff, which I don't quite believe, as we've discussed before. But, there's this big open space, I think, for really keen, curious, product-minded people to make an absolute killing and, like, really innovate. Because everybody's got access to LLMs, everybody's got access to the same base technologies, everybody's doing all the same sort of low-hanging fruit. If you can really innovate and think, what how would a user benefit from these technologies organized in a certain way, you're going to absolutely run amok. So I'd say that that's kind of that's the vision people should be leaning towards. I don't think AI is going to touch that for a long time.
Very good. Any other concepts around product management you think it would be good to clarify before kind of finishing up?
I think I've convinced myself I should be in product management.
I was going to say, I'm
Yeah, we need
maybe
we
start
need
a
it in the
business.
podcast.
I know I've been selling it. I've been selling it really hard. I think Megan has too. I'm kind of like questioning my life choices a little bit.
There's one
Well,
thing I
imagine
would
this
kind
then.
of there's one thing I would
What?
caution people with. I think there's a lot of product management roles that are coming up at the moment that have a title on the lines of like product manager dash AI, Gen AI product manager. I think I'm wary that that combo of product manager plus AI or something similar, it just doesn't make sense to me because
Agreed.
you've got a role which is essentially about forget which technology or solution we're going with. We're trying to focus on what the problem is, what the user needs are, and focusing on that. And then you're pinning on something that says, oh, and you can only use this tool set. You can only
Yes.
use AI to solve it. And it's just like, that's totally contradictory. So I think
Yeah.
anyone who's putting out job adverts into the world, please stop doing it. Anyone who's applying to jobs that have that as a title, just be careful and ask some questions. Why have you put those things together? Am I going to be like constrained to only applying AI even if I think it's inappropriate?
I don't know, like it's such a good point. Can you imagine being product manager for like, I don't know, a travel booking system, but then saying when you do your job you can only use AI?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense. Like, well, I can't actually do anything. Like, I can't retrieve. Am I allowed to look up a database to
No.
retrieve people's
No.
not see no AI?
No AI.
Can I just book deterministically filling in a form? No, you need AI. Yes, I agree with you. It's such a weird shoehorning of the solution
Yeah.
into what you're trying to do. So yeah, I agree with that. It doesn't make sense. That and it defeats the whole purpose of being product minded. To your
Yes,
point,
exactly. Exactly. It's just, yeah.
what is the like you said, what is the problem you're trying to solve? No, what's the solution?
It's
Agreed.
not very often that we'll agree that we've all been overly positive about a kind of concept throughout the show. So
I know.
maybe to change it up a wee bit. Obviously, Megan, you've been set up in a product environment for quite a while. Is there any times that you think, actually, do you know what, we run into certain problems with it, or it's maybe not as beneficial as maybe how you've set up teams in the past?
I'm going to continue to be pretty positive here, and I don't have like one big terrible example. What I would say is that just calling yourself a product org and changing a lot of people's job titles isn't it. You have to really change your process. You have to really change your planning methodologies and prioritization frameworks. And, it has to be something that's sort of deep within your roots as an organization. It's not just enough to like hire in a kind of product leader and hope that it all just falls into place. So, at the BBC, again, we are a product org, or the part of the BBC I sit in as a product org. That has taken a lot of work. I think we're about 3.5 years in, and it has really been a kind of wholesale cross-functional effort to get to the point where we can all confidently say we know what that means, we know what the benefits are, we understand why that's a good way of kind of adopting. That's a good methodology to adopt to solve business problems. It didn't come for free, just with a couple of tweaks to titles and things like that. So yeah, just go in cautiously and expect there to have to be quite significant change if that's something that you're adopting fresh.
Perfect.
Yep. And I think if you're in that sort of transition phase, or sort of, it's only pockets of the organization think a certain way, you can get a lot of friction happen
Yeah.
because you just, it's just people don't necessarily view things the same way. So that can be tough. I think, people were more like, I've just to deliver this thing and then forget about it, versus saying, no, we view this as a holistic offering and we should be able to completely change things if it's the right way to go. All of that's sort of a different way of thinking. So, and it's hard as well, I think, sometimes I think the best teams, and this is not product managers, it's product focused teams. It's when all the team sort of starts thinking that way. Like, we're building a product, we're going to own it end to end. We're going to really view it as a holistic offering that solves some problem. sometimes not everybody's bought into that vision. They just want to come and do their tickets and sort of forget about it, and that can be hard going. You want to get people all on board on the same vision, which is
And a lot of the
a
time,
recurring challenge in anything. Yeah, exactly.
that'll be the product manager's job to get everybody signed from the same
Exactly.
sheet, essentially. All right, I guys really enjoyed it. Thanks very much for both your takes, and then we'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers. See you later.
Cheers.